Today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of September. So let's get into it right now. First up, we have the book A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry, and this is a retelling, or rather a reimagining, of A Tale of Two Cities. And this, though, is magical and includes the Fae, and it's such an immersive story that just pulls you in. The characters are vibrant. The story is this woven tapestry of mystery and intrigue. Now, I've never read A Tale of Two Cities, so I honestly don't know how it compares. I just know that this is the second book I've read by H.G. Perry, and I've absolutely loved their writing, and so this book I thought was absolutely fantastic. If you like books that have the Fae in them, if you like stuff that's got that gothic vibe going on, then A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry might just be for you. Also, if you like the author, you'll probably like this book too. After that one, I read Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang, and this is the first book that I've read by this author. It starts out almost like a normal fiction story and then kind of goes like into sci-fi weirdness. It follows the story of these two artists. There's the Fringe and the Enclave, and these are like the two different parts of society that people come from. The Fringe is kind of like the more poverty level, and then the Enclave is like, you know, they have access to everything and they're rich and look down their noses at people and whatnot. So the Fringe didn't have all the access to like all the art supplies and the arts and the music and the culture. And while in the Enclave, they have everything plus above that you could possibly want. So these two different students, one from the Fringe and one from the Enclave, end up becoming friends. And at first, the friendship, you know, they're inspiring to each other, but then the one woman kind of just falls into a whole jealous spiral and then doesn't seem to be able to get out of it. At some point, the one artist, her artwork was with technology, and she gets hooked up with this doll corporation, and the doll corporation had manufactured this thing that was kind of called a scaffold, where you could basically download all the contents of a brain onto another brain, and eventually they're going to do this with humans, and then they'll have a thing where the humans can have it in their head and another one gets implant, and then they can kind of like, when there's people who have like too much weight of the world on their shoulders, they can share that hurt and depression with someone else, so it doesn't make them spiral as much. And so you get down the line where these two artists eventually have this scaffold that they share, and it's about invasiveness and, you know, almost like the surveillance of someone's mind, and it's weird and just a very interesting and strange story. If you want some more information on this, I actually have a standalone review where I go a little more in depth explaining what the story is about, and I'll link down below if you want to check that out. But I loved the writing. I definitely want to check out, there's another book by this author called Natural Beauty that I've heard that's really good. Okay, so after that one, I read Strange Pictures by Uketsu. And Uketsu is an anonymous author. No one knows who they are. Like when they appear online, they have a mask on and they use like a voice changer. Mysterious and curious. I thought that was pretty fascinating. So this book I picked up at the library, random book. It just said like Japanese horror sensation and had these like little like hand-drawn pictures on the front of the book, so Strange Pictures. And so basically it's a bunch of different stories, but they all interlace and connect and like come back around on each other. And it's this weird murder, mystery, rabbit hole spiral. And then you have the element of these pictures too, and how they're kind of like clues to this mystery of what's happening and going on. And I absolutely loved it. It is weird and wondrous, and I really want to read. There's another book this author did too that I want to check out at some point, and I can't remember the name of it right now. I want to call it like Strange Houses or something, but I'm not sure if that's it. I don't think that's it. After that one, I read Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon by Mizuki Tsushimura. This book is about this teenage boy who's called the Go-Between, and he sets up meetings between the living and the dead. Now, the dead have the option to say they don't want to meet the person who requested them. So the living can only request to do this once. Once they've had their meeting, they can never do this ever again. And then the dead also, once they've said yes to a meeting, they can no longer talk to another living person ever again either. So like each party really has to like think about this. And so you have like several different like stories within the full story about these people who request to talk to certain people. You know, some are what you would think like people who have passed on and that were part of their family, but then others are like someone's best friend growing up as a teenager, and then this other is like this person wants to talk to a celebrity who had died, and like you're like, oh, is this person gonna say yes? Is this person gonna say no? And so you kind of like are guessing at that, and then you also get the backstory of the go-between, like how the go-between became the go-between and like how they even do this, how they talk to the dead to set up these meetings. And I loved it. I thought it was pretty fantastic. If you've ever read the book Before the Coffee Gets Cold, it's kind of got that vibe, but like the people have way longer to spend with the deceased. They have hours as opposed to Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And I thought it was really well done. I like the writing. I like the story. Great book. And it's not too big. I think it was maybe 250 pages. So not super long, not super short. Just like a good book to have enough story, and it's emotional and it's sad and sweet and so many things. Great book. After that one, I read one of my most anticipated reads this year, which is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas. Isabel Cañas writes the best horror romance. This is the third book that I've read by her, and I really love how atmospheric her books are, how she puts you in a time and place. So it's usually like a historical setting of some sort. So that's usually going on, and you really like feel the atmosphericness and the vibes, and she just draws the characters so well. So you have this main character, Alba Diaz, and as the title would suggest, she ends up being possessed. So plague hits her family and her fiance's family. They go and they move to this property that is near the silver mine, where her fiance's family, you know, is trying to make their fortune and all that stuff. But their family is actually indebted to her family because they gave them loans. And so this all goes to the history of this, that, and the other. But since her fiance, they're going to be getting married, it's very possible her father will never collect on the loans, this, that, and the other. But anyways, they get there. Alba's curious about the mines and she wants to go in there and like check it out. So she goes in there with her fiance, and then she freaking wanders off and gets lost, ends up hearing like a baby crying in the mine, and then it's dark all of a sudden and she's trying to move towards wherever this baby is. You know it's not a baby and there's something evil's in that cave. Anyways, Elias hears and finds her and brings her back out. And then her fiance is like furious because he hates Elias, and Elias was a prior convict, this, that, and the other. He's like the black sheep of the family and whatever. And Elias is like, you let her wander off like some idiot. Like, why did you let her wander off deep into the caves? Anyways, here you go. Here she is. Cool. But once she comes back, like stuff is not okay. And like she starts sleepwalking. She used to sleepwalk when she was a kid, and she keeps trying to sleepwalk back into this mine, and if she makes it into the mine, I don't think it's going to be very good. It's not going to work out good for her at all. It's a crazy story. I love Isabel Cañas. Her writing is fantastic. Although I will say my favorite is still The Hacienda. That's my favorite one of hers. This was still great. But The Hacienda, like if you haven't read any Isabel Cañas books, I would say start with that one. All right, so after that one, we read a vampire book, and that is Coffin Moon by Keith Rawson. I love Keith Rawson. My love affair first started when I read his duology, the Fever House duology, which is so deranged and out there. It's like a story of good and evil and apocalyptic times and the crap hitting the fan. There's so much just crazy stuff going on with angels and demons and just the world falling apart. There's a whole musical element to it, and it's crazy. If you haven't read the Fever House duology, do it. It is effed up and deranged and awesome. Of course, I'm going to read his new book, and I love vampires. I'm a sucker for a vampire book. So, Coffin Moon, read it. It's effed up. It follows the story of this Vietnam vet. His name is Dwayne Miner. He comes back from the war. He's just trying to stay sober. He's been sober for about 18 months. And what ends up happening is everything's fine until he crosses the path of this vampire, John Varley, and he couldn't let some stuff go, and so Varley retaliates and may kill someone that was dear to him, and so then he basically vows vengeance, and him and one of the other characters go after this Varley character and track him across the country to what could be his own impending death. But you'll have to read it to find out what happens. And I just really like the way that Rawson pulls you into the story. He writes a very effed up and deranged and atmospheric story. Would recommend. After that one, I read a historical fiction that's won a bunch of awards. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2024, and then it also won the Women's Award for Fiction in 2025. There's this woman named Isabel who lives in this house, and it's in the Netherlands. It's in 1961, and one day her brother's always bringing home like a new girl every like month or so. So he shows up, they go out to dinner, her brother, his new girlfriend Ava, and then like the other brother. The other brother and Isabel don't like the new girlfriend Ava. She is kind of obnoxious and ditzy, and just they're like, whatever, she'll be gone soon because Lewis, he is a freaking flake and never sticks with anyone for longer than 2 minutes. But at some point, Lewis gets called away for a business trip where he's going to be gone for several months. And he's like, hey, Ava's going to stay with you at the house. And Isabel's like, what? This is my house. He's like, oh, it's your house? Because it's not really. The house is promised to Lewis. Once his uncle passes on, the house goes to Lewis. And Lewis hasn't really wanted it. He's like, well, if I ever decide to start a family and settle down, then maybe, you know. But he's like, this is my house. She's going to stay there. She doesn't need to stay alone in the apartment and whatnot, this, that, and the other. And she's like, ugh, fine. Isabel is bitter and angry and just a grump and kind of horrible. And you have Ava, who is just a brassy, chipper little thing that is the complete opposite of Isabel. And so when they first get there, Isabel is basically like an a-hole to Ava. And Ava's always trying to talk to her and like, hey, you want to go for a walk? Hey, I went out and I went into town. I got you a pear, you know, like. And then like Isabel's such a butthole. She takes the pear and like she's overthinking everything. She's like, oh, I don't want her to see me eat it, but blah, blah. So she eats it. And then she doesn't want to throw the core in the garbage so that Ava knows she ate it. So she eats the whole thing. She eats the seeds and the core and everything. So Ava doesn't freaking know. Like, Isabel's got problems. But as she progresses with her relationship with Ava, she starts to soften around the edges and become less of an a-hole and actually like let someone into her life because she's built all these walls for so freaking long. But then you also have the historical background of World War II and all the after effects and like the house that she lives in, how the house when they got there came with all the stuff, even all the dishes and things. And that house had belonged to a Jewish family, and the person who owned the house, the reason the house was taken from them is because the father died and was murdered in a concentration camp. So you have that whole background, like what happened to the families that were in these houses, and so you have that in there as well. It's so emotional and so beautiful, and there's so much going on in this story. It's so freaking good. I see why it won these awards. Like, it is fantastic. If you like historical fiction and books that pull at the heartstrings, then The Safekeep by Yael van der Wooden is absolutely fantastic. All right, so my favorite out of all of these, and it's funny, I looked back at them. There's a lot of really great books that I read this past month, but I think my favorite was A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry, and this blows my mind because this is an author I've recently discovered, and that was a reimagining of A Tale of Two Cities. Maybe I just love stories about the Fae because the other book I read by them was about the Fae as well. So, I don't know. Like I said, so many freaking good books. And I read a little less than normal because I'm trying to make my way through the dang Tommyknockers right now, which is another King chonker. So that book's super weird, and hopefully I'll finish that next month. But yeah, favorite one, A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry. Who knew? What was your favorite read this month? Let me know down in the comments. Always curious to hear what you're enjoying. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.